Hey everyone, this is Deborah, and today we're going to be talking about emotional enmeshment. So, what it is and how it impacts our long-term mental health and well-being, as well as our relationships. So, emotional enmeshment is when there are unclear emotional boundaries between ourselves and others. So, we pass on our emotions or we take on the emotions of other people. And those other people are people we're normally in relationships with or groups we're a part of. So that could be our family or our friend group or a team of some kind that we're connected to. Because we are a social species, we're wired to emotionally affect and be emotionally affected by other people. So our emotional states and the emotional states of other people are contagious if there's emotional enmeshment and there aren't clear emotional boundaries. From an evolutionary perspective, emotional enmeshment is actually a really adaptive trait, and it's part of the reason why we've made it this far in our evolutionary history. If you think about our early ancestors who didn't have complex verbal language skills, they communicated with each other through emotions, and by passing on their emotions to other people and taking on the emotions of others, they were able to understand what other members of their group needed in order for them to survive. So they were able to provide for other people's needs by communicating with their emotions. And if you think about children today too, that are still early in their development and don't yet have complex thinking or verbal language skills, they're also communicating with their caregivers through their emotions. And their caregivers need to be able to receive those emotions in order to understand what the child needs to survive. So we've made it this far in our evolutionary history because of emotional enmeshment. So being emotionally enmeshed does not make us broken or flawed or traumatized or wounded. It simply just means that we're human, and it's a natural stage in our development. However, there are consequences to emotional enmeshment in modern life, and especially in our adult lives. Emotional enmeshment in modern life is not as adaptive as it was in our evolutionary history, and it's certainly not adaptive in our adult lives. In our adult lives, we need to be able to separate our emotional reactions from our ability to become aware and reflective, thoughtful, and deliberate in our decision-making processes. So part of adulthood is being able to work on becoming less emotionally enmeshed, and therefore becoming more emotionally mature, meaning we're not so driven by our emotions and we can actually become more thoughtful and deliberate in our decision making versus emotional. And we can communicate our needs in better ways than just by passing on our emotions to other people or taking on their emotions. So the way we work on reducing emotional enmeshment is by cultivating emotional maturity. And there are two basic ways that we can cultivate emotional maturity. The first is by developing greater awareness of our own emotions and of taking responsibility for managing them instead of dumping them on other people or expecting other people to soothe us or make us feel better. We own our own emotional experience and we manage that. We calm ourselves down, we bring ourselves back to emotional stability so that we don't arouse everyone else in our relationships and our groups. The second is to develop the ability to set and hold healthy emotional boundaries with other people that we're in relationships with or that are members of our group. When we do this, we don't take on their emotional states, and this helps us to remain emotionally stable and therefore more thoughtful and deliberate in our decision making. It also has the side effect of helping others learn to take responsibility for their own emotions and managing their own emotional process because we're refusing to take it on. Over the long term, this benefits the groups that we are a part of, whether that's our family, our friends, our workplaces, or society at large. Because when there's less emotional enmeshment and when there are healthier emotional boundaries, then we're less likely to spread emotional reactivity. And therefore, we're more likely to remain emotionally stable and make more thoughtful decision making within the groups that we are a part of. So in our adult lives, healthier emotional boundaries and less emotional enmeshment leads to adults that are more mature, more responsible for themselves. We end up taking on less from others and passing on less to them, and each person becomes responsible for their own emotional experience. And this ultimately helps us have less burnout, less overwhelm, less anxiety that we take on from others, and greater levels of mental health and well-being over the long course of our lives. it also leads to better relationships with other people because each person is ultimately acting like an adult and taking responsibility for their own emotional experience. And then it leads to relationships as well as groups of people who are able to make more thoughtful and deliberate decisions instead of decisions that are based off of emotional reactivity, instincts, or impulses. So there you have it, emotional enmeshment. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or comments or feedback about emotional enmeshment, I look forward to hearing them. Leave your comments below, and we'll see you next time here in Evolving with Deborah.